President Donald Trump is suggesting rogue killers and not Saudi leaders were behind the disappearance of a Washington Post columnist. Today, the president said he spoke with Saudi Arabia's king about Jamal Khashoggi. He vanished after entering the Saudi consulate in Turkey nearly 2 weeks ago. Turkey and Saudi Arabia are conducting a joint inspection today. President Trump has been facing growing pressure to take action if the Saudis are behind Khashoggi's disappearance. But here is what Mr. Trump said earlier.
We are going to leave nothing uncovered. With that being said, the king firmly denied any knowledge of it. He didn't really know. Maybe, I don't want to get into his mind, but it sounded to me like maybe these could have been rogue killers. Who knows? We're going to try getting to the bottom of it very soon. But his was a flat denial.
Joining me now is McClatchy News White House correspondent Anita Kumar. Anita, thank you for being with us. Now,
Sure.
The president's comments that the king totally denies being involved in Khashoggi's disappearance are similar to what he's also had to say about Vladimir Putin when facing election hacking. Is this an indication that the president is perhaps trying to avoid confrontation with certain world leaders at all costs? And why would that be?
Yeah, it did actually remind me of what he said about the election, and people, members of, Congress criticized him for that. And members of Congress have been much more outspoken than President Trump about, Saudi Arabia being behind this. But President Trump often does this when he's trying to get along with a leader or trying to get along with a country. He will say that he wants, it could be something else. He's just not positive. And that's exactly what he said today. And, they've had a good relationship, Saudi Arabia and the Trump administration. Remember, this is the country that President Trump visited first when he became, after he was sworn in last year. They came up with this arms deal that he has touted, that President Trump has touted over and over. So he definitely is wanting to be cautious about it. People are starting to get a little bit critical of that, though, and saying that there's evidence here, that's evidence being reported in the media, and it looks like they're behind it.
So, Anita, the president also keeps emphasizing that Khashoggi was a Saudi citizen. Is he doing that to sort of validate dialing down the outrage?
President Trump has said from the very beginning of his administration, in fact, it was at the inauguration, that his policy would be America first. And that seems like a very simple thing to say. But he values and talks about what he can do for Americans before anyone else. Now, remember, he was in exile. Khashoggi was in exile, and he was living in Virginia. And so that's why you've seen people like Senator Tim Kaine, the senator from Virginia, talking about him and talking about those ties that he had here. So obviously he did have ties to the United States, but President Trump often talks about how he will help Americans first.
So the president says that he is sending Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to meet with the king. What do you think that will accomplish?
Well, I do think President Trump is taking it seriously by sending Secretary Pompeo. Remember, Pompeo is the one who has been negotiating on the president's behalf with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. So he's often his go-to person with some of these really touchy issues. He's an important part of the administration, and more than his role, the two men really do get along and have kind of hit it off in the last year and a half. So he's sending Secretary Pompeo to sort of see what the Saudi Arabian government says, what can be done, and sort of he'll make a decision on what to do after he gets a report from him.
And Anita, it's obviously not just, Congress and the White House that's worried about this. Germany, France, and the UK are calling for a credible probe. Is everyone confident that a successful investigation will happen?
Well, that's a tough question, because part of it is obviously, are Turkey and Saudi Arabia going to go ahead and allow, a thorough investigation, right? This wasn't on U.S. soil. It wasn't on European soil. So we're going to need, the United States and Europe is going to need some assistance from those other countries. So far we're hearing that there is going to be this investigation and that the countries are cooperating, but it's a little bit early to tell at this point. I think that's one of the things that Secretary Pompeo will try to find out.
All right. Now, meanwhile, Anita, the president had a wide-ranging interview with 60 Minutes where he was asked about his administration's family separation policy. Here's what he had to say about that.
When you allow the parents to stay together, okay? When you allow that, then what happens is people are going to pour into our country.
So are you going to go back to that?
Well, we're looking at a lot of things. Really, what we want to do is change the immigration laws because they're a laughing stock all over the world.
Are you willing, though? I think you're saying it's under consideration.
No, I want all the laws changed. There have to be consequences, Leslie, for coming into our country illegally. And part of the reason, I have to blame myself, the economy is so strong that everybody wants to come into the United States.
Can I just ask this simple question, yes or no?
Go ahead.
Are you willing to reinstitute that policy? You said we're looking at everything. Yes
I will only,
or no?
you can't say yes or no. What I can say is this. There are consequences from coming into a country, namely our country, illegally.
And we should point out that under President Obama's administration, the family separations were not enforced. But where does the Trump administration's immigration efforts stand at this time?
Well, I thought his comments were really telling that he wouldn't rule it out. You know, the president has been frustrated because this was a policy that he was, moving ahead with, the zero tolerance policy. He got such a backlash, he had to reverse course. And that does not happen very often. I mean, he does not like to do that. He does not tend to do that. So, he hasn't been uncomfortable with the whole situation. The president and the administration are still pushing for Congress to fix what they call, outdated laws or laws that aren't, helping deal with the situation that it is now, right? These are laws that have been on the books for a number of years, and they don't really, deal with the full situation. That's not really happening right now, right? There's an election in a few weeks, then there's the lame duck Congress, and they won't take up anything like this. And so then we have to see, are the Democrats in control, are the Republicans in control with Congress? Many of the things that he wants done can only be done legislatively. So if he wants to have like a wholesale fix of these laws, the Congress has to do that. Now, he can work on some executive actions, and he has been doing that. If you'll remember, this is one of the things that he said, well, I'm going to take executive action about. He decided what would be enforced, right? Jeff Sessions, and he talked about this, that they would enforce this zero tolerance policy, and he's the one who said, okay, we won't enforce it now. So, I mean, he does have the authority to do that, just as President Obama did. And he's here for the first time I'm hearing that he's left the door open to change it back.
Yes, we are hearing that, which is an interesting development. Now, Anita, the president also made some headlines for what he had to say about his Defense Secretary James Mattis. Let's play that.
What about General Mattis? Is he going to leave?
Well, I don't know. He hasn't told me that. I have a very good relationship with him. It could be that he is. I think he's sort of a Democrat, if you want to know the truth. But General Mattis is a good guy. We get along very well. He may leave. I mean, at some point, everybody leaves. Everybody.
I think he's sort of a Democrat. Wow, that's a dig coming from the president. So, yeah. Anita, what has been the source of tension between the president and Mattis?
Yeah, that was not a good comment.
No.
I remember back in the beginning of the administration, he talked a lot about General Mattis, could not stop talking about Mad Dog Mattis is his nickname, and what a strong, one of the best generals there was. So over the last year and a half or so, there have been a handful of things that they've just disagreed on. Now, General Mattis is very clear not to be taking those up publicly, but we know that a couple of issues, the long-term future of the Iran nuclear deal and what's happening now with that, NATO and supporting countries in Europe that they have disagreed on. And even if General Mattis is quietly disagreeing with the president on them, the president may feel that he's not in the same thinking the same as he does, especially since, he's had other people come in, John Bolton, his new national security advisor, he's had other people come in that are different than General Mattis, different thinking, different view. They may be swaying him more, and he may be taking a second look at that. Now, it hasn't risen to the point where he's tweeting horrible things about General Mattis or talking about him like Attorney General Sessions, so we'll have to see how it goes. But that line was very telling.
It was, indeed. All right, Anita Kumar, thank you so much for sharing your insight with us today.
Thank you.